Welcome to mini proposal workshop with Curtis Myers, Tõnis Kaue, Jaide, and David Patterson, Robert, and TH. Our topic today is AI tools for decentralized groups. So let's dive into this. Today is 2022, and the first chapter I would suggest to take is the problematization itself, which is the hardest of the ones usually to write. So let's start with the first one. What problems do you see?
All right. I'm looking through some of our notes here, trying to find the best phrase to capture our problem statement. But there's kind of a few that we're noticing. So we do find a problem of tracking and managing the insight or the knowledge that is discussed during a meeting. And in today's growing remote work, there's much more insight being shared within these meetings. So the need for effective virtual meeting management tools has become more crucial. Generally, there needs to be somebody who's dedicated to tracking the insight during a meeting, and that's kind of wasteful. Some people are capable of doing both, participating in a meeting and trying to take notes. But I think for the average person, it's difficult to do both at the same time. By freeing up the need to capture insight during a meeting, that frees up that individual to participate. And then there is the dissemination of that information tends to be lacking. The people who are taking the notes know where everything's at, but it's very difficult for just a community member to try to see what's been happening during these meetings, what's been discussed, what was the agenda items. Generally, that's difficult, and it's time consuming to disseminate that information. So there's a need for a tool that can automate that.
So it's also sometimes unclear how to create agenda items for next meeting, was that it?
Yeah, there's kind of a, sorry, Teva, go ahead.
Or yeah, or was it like both ways that?
So it's kind of a twofold, yeah. Like if I want to know what was discussed in a previous meeting, having a list of agenda items, just like bullet points, would be really nice. Like, is this a meeting that I should review, or should I even look into this further? Does it have the topics that I care about? Then there's the second part, which is addressing, okay, what is it that we should be, what should be the agenda items for the next meeting, so that we can have a more effective, time efficient meeting, and having AI tools that could potentially produce that based off of the previous content would be nice as well. And then additionally, we've talked about how could you query, if you have 50 meetings that have been captured and tracked with any tool, and it kind of becomes a knowledge management system in itself, how could you get access to that without having to hunt for that specific information? So using AI to pull in your data set and bring those insights to the surface when it's relevant, where it's relevant, becomes very valuable.
Yeah. On the agenda items, although it's already getting, I'm not sure is it getting solution side, but I would also add that, for example, in governance school, we realized that there are meeting items, which are basically three main ones. One are action items, another one are agenda items, and third ones are decision items. So like differentiating like different objects, I would say, is something that would be nice to have, because the agenda item, like the first level, like, okay, let's have a meeting when you like train a new group. Okay, how do we make a meeting like more effective? Let's have agenda items. Let's have like thought of what we are actually talking about instead of always coming up with what should we talk about. And once we kind of get used to that, then it's gonna get more like complicated. Okay, we do have agenda items, but we actually want to progress also, and then bring other elements in. So I'm gonna add just action items, decision items, and agenda items. There's a note.
Yeah, we definitely like that. We're looking into ways to elevate or escalate that information. Looked into classification AI models that can extract, and classify, tag that information. So it would be nice to be able to identify a piece of information as this is an action item, this is a decision item, this is an agenda item. And hopefully our tool can produce that. Yeah.
Are these all, okay, basically these are all problems. There are more video meetings than before. I actually thought this is around the same one. Taking notes is an operational task. It also freezes up individual. I guess that's an underlying task. All right, let's take these main issues. I'm going to put these under here. And let's do some root cause analyzing. Even though you already touched it, but let's put it out in an open. Like, why is it the problem that the meeting insights are not managed or tracked?
Lost. So my thoughts are that there's a lot of lost insights when it's not properly tracked. And even when a human has to take those notes, we are human, right? So we're not going to capture 100% of what is being said or discussed during a meeting. So there's a lot of inefficiencies there. And I also think that it creates duplicity in the sense that you've already had a meeting about something and maybe most of the members forgot about it, or it just wasn't properly documented. So then they have another meeting about the same topic to kind of go over it further. So it just kind of creates duplicated tasks.
I'll add to that. At times that some corporations and some organizations think having a pre-meeting before the main meeting and a post meeting. So it's really technically 2 additional meetings that you could actually eliminate if we had this tool.
Well, can you explain it like a bit more? So you're saying that right now people have meeting before a meeting to discuss about meeting, I guess.
Yeah, it happens quite often. They're not really sure what the meeting agenda is going to be. So they have a meeting with their team to have another meeting with the shareholders. And then once that meeting is adjourned, they have a third meeting, which is like a post meeting, to discuss anything they need to have as an agenda for the following meeting.
Yeah, although this could come down to basically operations, and and I guess this is reason why is that it's because it is efficient to have meetings, and kind of people are already lost basically in their work, and that's the issue we're actually addressing here. Right. And anybody else wants to add in another problem? Why is it the problem that insights are not managed and tracked?
It relies on, in my opinion, it relies on the human to retain all that knowledge and keep that in their mind. If it's not documented, then it relies on that particular person and their memory, right? Which kind of fails. If they are documenting it, then it relies on that human to document everything that was said. So it really is just, it's dissemination of that information. And then as Demi said, and it evolves around time efficiency, because just the more insights, the more time the human has to spend.
However, this is not really the problem. Like, this is a problem, but it's, yeah, this is not a problem. Why insights are not tracked or managed, but it's another one we could double down. Another one, there are more virtual meetings than before. I think that's a good argument, which is actually, we might want to look into like sources or proofs. And have you done any research on that, or finding any articles or links related to increase of amount of virtual meetings?
Yeah, I knew this one was going to come up. I couldn't find actual sources that maybe spit out, statistics that I could trust. I have come across some of that information, showing, oh, there's been a 70% increase since 2019 type of thing. But no, I didn't find actual proofs. And this was one of those things where I knew we'd probably spend a decent amount of time trying to find that information.
Yeah, if we trust Google, the first thing what comes up is video conferencing technology was used by 48% remote workers by 2020, and by 2022, 2 years later, percent increased to 77%. I think Zoom actually might, I assume Zoom will actually have an article or blog about that, because the whole domain is about virtual meetings. So for a strategical action item, I think we could look into that. What you think about like checking into Zoom reports, or looking up, or some other meeting programs?
Yeah, I'm looking for some of that right now. Since Zoom is kind of the #1 right now, I do think that's a good, accurate start for sure.
I think there are definitely more meetings now already because of COVID.
Definitely. So in this case, though, Tivo, we are looking for like statistics and numbers. Is that more or less what? Okay.
And the best what works is actually, because now let's zoom out a bit. But what we're doing is we're ideating on proposal, and when actually the proposal writing comes later, once you have ideated all the stuff, and these, if you have like links and proofs and sources, then you don't have to necessarily do anything yourself, but only state that, hey, this is the problem statement we are addressing, this is the solution for that. But why this problem is irrelevant is because we see the market, we see how like the world changes, and this is why our problem is impactful. And all you have to do is link to that proof, and usually, if it's a blog or article, they describe their own way why is it increasing, and then people are able to kind of put the connection together. So it's somewhat, it's just like an additional value. As of April 22, Zoom surpassed 300 million daily Zoom meeting participants. Oh, that's a lot. Yeah. So, and we also have Zoom, not Zoom, but Google Meet, the next second largest, I think. All right. So we put, okay, I see the link. Let's check the link. Yeah, the link about more virtual Zoom meetings. So we captured that there are proved that there are more virtual meetings before, and therefore more justified reason why we should work on this. And when we went down on these sticky notes, creates a lot of inefficiencies, unclear what happens in the meeting. It relies on human to retain knowledge. And it also freezes up individual. It's also sometimes unclear that agendas were discussed, what should be next agenda items, and taking notes in operational tasks. I think I'm gonna put it as a separate thing, and that also as a separate thing. I would invite everybody now to the Miro board, because let's have a quick vote on these basically more smaller problems, basically, or more root problems. I think the top answer was it relies on human to retain the knowledge, and the second best was basically sometimes unclear what agenda items were discussed. So these two were pretty good, but we have to pick one. So Curtis, to the honors, which one you think we should analyze further?
Yeah, if we have to narrow it down, I'd probably go with the human having to retain the knowledge, because I personally struggle with just so much information and it's stressful to try to keep up with it all.
Okay, then let's move from here and ask, now let's turn it into a problem statement first. So it relies on human to retain the knowledge. How would the problem statement look like? And the it then describes tracking and managing relies on human to retain the knowledge. And the knowledge then is talking about meetings, I guess.
I'm trying to incorporate a few things that this problem introduces, because not only does that person have to retain the knowledge, but they also have to attend every meeting to gain that knowledge, or to have those insights. Most people don't go back and watch YouTube videos or recordings that happened previously. They just kind of move forward from there. So how's that relevant? I'm trying to think of.
Humans are not good at retaining, tracking, and capturing insights from meetings. And you would want to also include
maybe, but you're actually on to one of the statements that we identified previously was humans just at nature, human nature is to be creative. We're actually not designed to be data storage, units. We're not meant to be banks of knowledge. We're meant to be creative and take maybe some of the previous experiences that we've had to produce and create. But we're not necessarily designed to just be huge terabytes of storage. So having AI or something else be reliable for that particular part allows the human to be that creative individual.
So I will add both of these down here. Okay, if we try one more time to go to the analyze it even further. So right now let's say we take this one. We started with this one. And we ask again, why is it the problem that, okay, now it's an awkward question. Why is it the problem that humans are not good at retaining, tracking, and capturing insight? And this now actually brings what you just mentioned. It is not a problem. And the humans are, but the problem is that, and we don't know, like they are meant to be created. That's a good point to mention. I really like that one. But how do you use that in a problem statement?
I guess, so to be creative, right, you have to have that foundation of insight or knowledge. And to get access to that insight and knowledge, you more or less have to attend all of these meetings. Otherwise, you know, you're more than likely not going to build that foundation. So having the insights and information discussed during a meeting readily available, maybe summarized, maybe consolidated, whatever the case is, you can consume that insight and that knowledge much quicker so that you can build your foundation to be more creative. So I guess identifying the problem would be that currently, if you wanted to get access to that insight, you need to attend, you need to be a participant and interact with these communities on a regular basis. If you missed out, then you potentially missed out on the insight and the knowledge during that meeting.
Yeah, that's actually quite a complicated one. I've never really entered to a space where I reach to the point where the problem is not the problem.
Uh-oh. Leave it to me.
Makes me wonder if we should try to turn to another one. It's also sometimes unclear what agenda items were discussed into a problem statement, because I feel like you actually started off with a very good problem statement already, like tracking and managing insight from meetings. And if you have like a list of more problem statements, we could work basically on these. And perhaps that would give us a better outcome than trying to find a root cause here. And just basically articulating problem statement. Because the final fact is, for the proposal, the problem statement is the most important statement you ever going to have. It's like, if you slip on that or slightly are like, oh, it's not really that, but then it's already like a bad start. It has to be calling, or the rest of the proposal may not be looked at. And another human nature. Perhaps we need an AI which just starts reading proposals and tells us what to vote for.
That'd be nice. So I'm copying over the problem statement when we originally went through your setup, but I'm not sure that it captures what you're looking for, which is why we're here, seeking your guidance. And so
that is all compassing and not, well, it is a problem statement.
So it's not specific enough, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, okay,
yeah,
that's what I figured. Because we're trying to address a few things with that problem statement, which is, I think we're just over encompassing that, because we talk about consistent and accurate data being recorded. So if a human is doing it, then it's never going to be consistent, maybe accurate, just depends on the individual. And that causes difficulties. And then the reporting and dissemination of that. So we're doing a bit too many problem statements in one, I think, like you said.
But to like this one, we could butcher some words, if I may.
Absolutely.
Tracking and managing is basically capturing insights. So
yeah, the last bit was more about how can the community members easily access this information. So consistent and accurate.
And if you bring organization, it's also like, one thing is that, so are you already know that you are going to target organizations, or you will be actually open to anybody?
Well, we are open to anybody, but to be honest, it seems, at least internally, anybody here, correct me if I'm wrong, Demi or Dave, that our initial target audience is more like a DAO structure or a community-based structure, something like SingularityNet, Catalyst, Little Fish, Gimbal Labs, some of these community oriented organizations, because they tend to come and go, people come and go, and it's very difficult to stay up to speed in those environments because it's not a mandatory meeting that you have to attend every single day. Maybe it's weekly. And so those are the types of users that we would like to supply tools for. I don't know if that answered your question, but we are open to anybody, but our intended audience is like a DAO or a community-based organization.
Yeah. So tracking and management of virtual meetings within the community organizations are not consistent and accurate, which is causing difficulties. I guess that which is causing this is I would actually even remove that, like the statement should invoke the voter or the assessor to like, oh, okay, and because of that, they should kind of come to that realizations on their own. However, maybe we could use this like tracking and management. Instead of saying tracking and management, we say making informed decisions from virtual meetings within the community organizations are not consistent and accurate.
I like that. So yeah, making informed decisions based on the insights during virtual meetings. I like that. So making informed decisions, I think, relies on the accuracy of the insights that were captured. So for instance, if there's a meeting to have a vote or a meeting to discuss how a vote should go, any form of governance, sometimes or most of the time that requires knowledge of previous discussions.
I wonder, could we somehow turn it also in an abstract form? What is it? Yeah, because it now comes to this, okay, what you do in meeting, you do action items, you do decision items, you do agenda items. But why do you do this is you either do it because you want to have a decision and which leads to action, or you do it because of basically education. You want to train somebody, coach somebody, get kind of like a methodology, philosophy across the table, or it's or it's just having fun, like, but I guess that's a bit more out of scope. It also frees up individual space to interact with the content it takes on. Also it's the individual itself. So there is a problem statement that note takers are not able to participate properly on the meetings. But then that's an assumption. But the problem statement should be an assumption. So that some people disagree, some people not, and this is the most impactful one. But this individual frees up space that could be actually used. Meeting takes a lot of time. Yeah, and I guess that comes back to this tracking and managing insight from meetings are time consuming. And I think this is the underlying problem statement that we will come back to. Yeah. What is more important than time? Or can we get more controversial problem statement?
I mean, you're kind of right. Like, I feel like all the problems, what they surface is efficiency or efficient use of your time. Whether you're tracking knowledge, whether you're creating action items or decision items or agenda items, like however you express your solution, in the end, it's addressing the fact of better usage of your time.
I think the insight perhaps throws off a little. Maybe this is actually the correct word, but what you think about tracking? And maybe this tracking is also a bit clunky and simply note-taking basically is what is the solution. So in the end, it's in the higher level, it's a documentation of meetings are time-consuming operations.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I agree with that problem statement, but I also feel like it's half the story. So documenting is one problem, but then consuming that documentation is the other half of the problem. If it's in raw form and it's, just a discussion or a translation or transcription of everything that was said, nobody's going to consume that because it's long length. It's in long format. But it needs to be consolidated, concise, accurate, and accessible. Then the consumption of that is also time consuming. So we need to, save part of that as well, make that more efficient process.
If you read like tracking, then the first thing comes, okay, or somebody is logging something and making basically like note taking, but it doesn't go straight to the note taking. And then managing insight from meeting. Yeah, it also kind of steers to the fact that, yeah, it looks like making like notes or like agenda items or like topic summaries. But that's just like one part of that. I think the bigger issue, because what we do want to do is look at problems, and consuming and documenting meeting videos feels like much broader, but it includes tracking and managing because it's documentation. Although documenting can throw off some people, like, what do you mean by documenting? But it's necessarily a bad thing, because then they will click on your proposal and read what you talk about, because I need documentation, but I'm not sure, but I don't need maybe tracking. I have many different type of documentation. And so it's more open.
Yeah. And we do, when you mentioned previously facilitation as well, our aim is to have our tool help with the facilitation, because in my opinion, facilitation is making things easier for others. That's what a facilitator's job is, right? Is helping get people in to the meeting, helping disseminate the information, making the information consumable, and ingestible. So facilitation, the facilitator themselves would use this tool to make their job easier, so that they can help more people, so they can make it a lot easier for people to participate in these meetings. And that's the managing. That's how I see it, is the managing of the meetings is what a facilitator's job is. And this tool would potentially make their jobs easier. Would you say that facilitation kind of includes the documentation piece plus how the end user is going to consume that information?
No, it's different,
Okay.
I will say.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually even, I wonder, would it be better to have two proposals if it then one is for facilitators and one is for consumers?
So I did have that question for you, Tivo, if there was a need to split our proposals up. There is, I think, 3 primary pillars that we were trying to address here. And one piece of it is the knowledge management system that we incorporate, so that all this meeting we consume tons and tons of knowledge and insights from these meetings, but then resurfacing that insight to provide utility and actual use for that is the task, right, that the human needs to do. But it's if they didn't participate, if they didn't attend all these meetings, then there is that's lost utility. So the knowledge management system itself is one of the foundation pillars that we want to build on, making that insight now rejuvenating. It's regenerating utility and resurfacing it when necessary. So that was one key piece. Then the other key piece was the actual facilitation of the meeting and creating agenda items and so forth, capturing action items, decision points that you've already brought up. So are those seen as separate proposals? Because our idea is it's all one tool that does all these different things. But do we split that up now into its primary functions as separate proposals?
Yeah, the risk is that you basically would then two proposals would be quite similar and both would have an overhead budget. So if both get funded, you basically double pay yourself for the infrastructure, and then you would need like another paragraph for both proposals that in the case of both proposals getting funded, there will be extra set of features or things we will look at. And that's my kind of, because you still need, and you can't just say, okay, this feature and this feature, but one doesn't, you need to think that if it gets funded and only one of that, and it doesn't matter which, any of them should still be able to complete it.
And you almost hit it exactly. When we discussed this previously and talked about splitting our proposal, the idea was, yes, if it was three separate proposals and all three got funded, then we'd either put in there some stipulations that we're going to increase the number of features because we have the additional funding, or alternatively, our beta testers would have access to our product for free of charge for X amount of time, because the community, right, similar to what Block Frost and some of them are trying to do is get funding so that it can be free to their end user. That would be an option for us. If all of them got funded, we could offer up free usage for a certain amount of time because that was funded by Catalyst.
From the other audience in this call, what you guys think about splitting up the proposals? Should we scope it down a little, or should we work on a problem statement which could encompass all the features, including the facilitation help and the consumer side of that output?
I am not sure, because this proposal generally is processed very differently than we did with our proposals, and I'm not sure how to kind of compare our processes. I will chip in when I kind of synchronize, sorry. So basically the thing is that we usually made it by starting the vision. Like we always started with the vision, not with how many proposals there are. And especially if you try to present your vision to Cardano community, what we have found is that splitting it into smaller pieces dilutes it. And for example, in case of CIP, Cardano improvement proposals, there was even outcry only one CIP should be done, and it should gather as many even disparate tasks and disparate aspects that are related to the same project. And that's what we do now. So unless it is a completely different project like painting and singing, right? Then we always try to put it into one proposal together. the disadvantage is that we really need to cut the features afterwards, because whatever we try to do, we cannot afford it all, right? There are always ideas and so on. So then we try at the next step to cut, but maximizing impact of what we do. In the case of us, it's usually maximizing the usefulness for developers, because we are developer serving company, and bringing documentation sites by using additional assets, or making sure that the repository is available, right? But I wouldn't even try to cut it, because then you dilute the vision and people will just, unless you have some other idea. Just
but on
yeah.
this topic though, even you would say that you would browse Catalyst proposals, which would you prefer? To take up a proposal with the problem statements saying that consuming and documenting meeting videos are time-consuming operations. And then you open up a proposal and you can read about how an AI tool will help you to leverage like meeting videos and kind of create documentation out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I would just
and then you have another proposal, which is saying that helping facilitating meetings is time consuming or something like that. And then it describes how an AI tool helps to facilitate the meeting. Or now there's a third option, which is now we're trying to kind of squeeze into is what is the problem statement? And then like, would it make sense to have it both together?
So I think to make it the simplest, I would just look at the topic that is most irritating in the way you consume and document the meeting videos now, right? So now you record it on Zoom, which is kind of convenient compared to Hangouts, which can just break your recording and silently drop it, which is awful. But it's not the only aspect, right? So what really takes most of your time? So maybe describe how you did it, because I mean, I know that we can go into much fancier ways of description, but describing your story and your pain points just worked for us, because we are not generally like creative writers.
So I really liked one of the things that Michael said, and I'm trying to put the pieces together in my head. So Michael, you said you kind of list the problem statements, find in your example, it was the SIP, find the SIP that addresses most of those problem statements, and what's the largest impact that the solution would have. So now instead of addressing a single problem statement, you're addressing multiple problem statements, and the solution should have the biggest impact on those.
Yeah, so one could tell it short, like tell your story, bring your pain, and then maximize impact of what you will get money for. So like what will decrease this pain, what would work as a painkiller for you, right? So tell what would be the painkiller, because usually unless you are this person who feels the pain, it's sometimes very difficult to tell how to best address the pain.
Yeah. And I like, I'm starting to form. So if we have a list of problem statements that we're attempting to address here, do we then need another problem statement that tries to address those multiples, that is zoomed out enough, to incorporate those multiple problem statements?
If you want to have one proposal.
Yeah, so the proposal is kind of story. So everything that you can afford within the story, because let's be realistic. One thing is that project cannot be too big. The other thing is that usually you cannot like address everything in the world, right? There would be always things that it's just that too difficult to do, or you put a lot of work into fixing it, but then you will learn that it will not help.
I'm just gonna leave it. Project can't be too big.
So I would just find like 3 to 7 things that you can most easily fix, right? Like maybe you, in our case, it's like maybe some service can be just replaced by some automaton, right? So maybe you send the video to email address and AI edits it, right? Or something like this. So one example how you could address the pain point is to somehow connect the recording from Zoom, right? Because you always make recording from Zoom. Send it to the address, get transcript from it, and put it on the wiki, on Cardano wiki, right? Or on the Cardano page that is for this. And then, people would start commenting, would start bringing the actual page of what it says, what happened on this meeting, but there would be already a start for nothing. So something done kind of for free once you have automation set up.
Then put the hard decision on Curtis to choose, do we continue trying to encapsulate facilitation also in problem statement, or we go with the fact that we do it the MVP style, mini proposal style, that we scope it down and address one pain point, which I feel right now is either humans are not good at retaining, tracking, and capturing insights from meetings, or consuming and documenting meeting videos are time-consuming operations.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So the way I'm looking at it right now, as far as making a decision, is to me they're relative. They share some of the same pains. They are different, they are unique, but they share some of the same pains and they address some of the same concerns. And further down, solutions and impact, which one can actually bring out the other one, right? Because they are addressing similar problems. The humans are not good at retaining the insight, but that also means that consuming the insights is a difficult task and a long time-consuming task. So
yeah, that almost feels like this is the one proposal for facilitation. That's another side for the after fact. Like, okay, when the video is already out, how do you document it?
yeah,
And
I do want to
more preparing.
Yeah, as we progress through this, I do kind of want to address the consumption piece. That is a big component of what we're offering. Is it's not just a recording or a transcription of your Zoom meetings, because nobody's going to actually consume that. That's too long of a time. So consolidating that information and extracting classifications, extracting like tagging mechanisms. We talked about this topic, and this topic. Now you can actually search for, show me all the meetings that we discussed governance, show me all the meetings where Catalyst Circle, was discussed. And that's the extraction piece, the consumption piece. Like, this is relevant to me right now. I'm resurfacing this particular information. That's I think the power of the tool that we're building. But what problem is that addressing?
Disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming operations.
Yeah, no, I like
And
that.
maybe,
Dissemination is also a key component. We envision, all the insights that occur during these meetings are readily available to all of the community members, not just like in the case of otter.ai, the person who's subscribing is the only one who really has access to it. You can send out an email, chain and send that to the participants, but that requires a lot of involvement. So just having a place like, say, like Twitter, there's communities inside of Twitter that people can subscribe to, belong in, and get access to the threads of conversations that's happening there. Same would happen here, where all that insight, as long as the organization or the community is sharing it, which they get to choose, then anybody can freely come in and get access to that information. So that's the dissemination piece that is critical here.
Okay, so we have now disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming activities. Do we feel like we found some kind of problem statement that we can work a proposal around? And that fits to the solution you have in your mind?
Yeah, I think that's
at least a part of that.
Yeah, I think that's broad enough to where when we start discussing our solutions, it could fall under that. So yeah, that's fairly abstract enough to where we can actually pull multiple problem statements from that single problem statement is sort of what I'm after. And I think that's true here. So yeah, I like it.
All right, let's then close down the hunt for problem statement. There is always room to do that beyond. And on meantime, when we get sleep and like, oh, I now know what stands there. But let's stick with this one. Disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming activities. It's a statement, and just to be aware, it's a catalyst step. On that, let's get philosophical and talk about needs. Disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming activities. Is this problem now addressing, and these are the solutions going to address, like self-actualization or esteem needs? Somebody's looking for prestige or feeling of accomplishment, intimate relationships, is there a requirement for security? So we're gonna go through from the top and then kind of have like a go on. So addressing this problem, does it have any effect on self-actualization?
So I kind of feel like that is a result. What you're stating opens up more time to progress with personal or group goals. That's a byproduct that you get from it. I'm kind of seeing that it just makes better use of your time. More so, what you have access to, your tools, your knowledge, your intelligence, whatever the resources that you're using are now more capable. You can do more with your time. So if that ends up saving time so that you can spend it on personal or other related things, then that's great. But it's more like it's enhancing your abilities, your ability to track, facilitate, all the things that we need to do. It's just enhancing those abilities. Yeah, I'd say solving this problem enhances people's use of time and or resources. I don't know if that's relevant.
Yeah, resources at time. So solving this problem enhances people time management, basically. And let's just keep it time-wise.
Okay.
I think. Any other ideas on self-actualization? Does it help if you solve this problem? Does it help to achieve goals? Yeah, I think it does. It actually opens up more time. It still has this effect, including creative activities. And that's actually touched it previously. Humors are meant to be creative, so it does open up creativity.
So I think the self-actualization is this part about addressing your pain and making it like a personal story but also gaining the confidence that you actually solved the problem you had. So for example, it's not just creativity, but also gaining confidence in your solution. So you can also, for some people at least, that like this confidence, you can add controlling the results of the project to self-actualization, because they will enjoy the feeling that they actually succeeded in this endeavor.
I agree with what Michael's saying. Because so our motto, our catchphrase is forming regenerative, abundant ecosystems. And part of that is, knowledge systems and insights during meetings. So one of the things we want to address is, once you capture this knowledge, how do you resurface it at the right time and place where it's relative and it makes sense, and gaining confidence in your ability to do so is, I think, an outcome potentially.
I would actually want to double down on the gaining confidence. So when we solve the problem of disseminating and documenting meetings, what kind of confidence it then opens up?
So one thing, you know that you really solved it. The second is that you give yourself feedback and you get feedback from other people that they have more documentation. That's something, if you like put your ear to the ground in terms of your, your kind of customers or other people participating in the meetings, you always see that the more they can interact with you, the more they can look at the documentation, the more happy they will be about it. So it is finding a way to let them tell you something like button, right? It's the simplest thing, the like button, that is subject of a lot of discussions. It's the simplest thing to do. The other thing is add the comment, oh, I actually found it useful, or number of impressions for the documentation page. If you start a project, sometimes it starts, it's like GitHub stars or something like this. Starts with just you being the impression on the web page, and then after a few months, when you tell other people and they find it useful, you find that it starts being hundreds of impressions per week, and then it's thousands and so on, right? I'm not thinking about specific metrics, just find a way for other people to give you this extra confidence that it's super useful.
I love that, Michael. So what we have been talking about recently as well is allowing the community members themselves, right? So ChatGPT is a prompt. You just prompt it and then it provides you some information. If we use that knowledge management system as the data set that our tool can interact with, you can prompt it to extract, certain value from that knowledge management system. And then the community can provide their impressions, their feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. And then the ones that have the most or the largest impact or impressions can surface to the top. But it allows the community to actually derive value from that outside of just the facilitator and the organization themselves. The community can now extract value and then share that value with the rest of the community.
I would put that last note to the love and belongingness needs, which is a psychological need, and it's more like an intimate relationship, friends, and just being part of group. And if you're able to interact with them more clearly, I would put it there. And perhaps even this gaining confidence that the participants are progressing, or gaining confidence, I would actually maybe even move that to the esteem one, because the prestige and feeling of accomplishment. But now it's, you don't really feel accomplished when others do stuff. So I guess it's, That's a hard one. I don't know actually where to put that. That's safety and needs. So gaining confidence is basically safety that now, or security, that you trust that you see meeting notes on the results by others, and that gives you confidence. And that, I guess, that's the basic need of security and safety compared to
I think it is
just
all
meetings.
three, because one, you feel better about yourself when you get likes. You also feel safe that it is a good solution, right? But you also feel like proud of what you have done. And pride is kind of inwards directed emotion, right? It's separate from love and belonging or safety.
Mm.
You may feel proud with experiment that was nothing but safe, for example.
Proud of effectively capturing value from your interaction with other people. Yeah. So, because that this problem is solved means that, yeah, physically disseminating and documenting meetings is no longer a problem. And if people are doing it, they can be also, yeah, feel accomplished. I did documenting. I did the information, yeah, information sharing. We do have one basic need level more, which is food, water, warmth, rest. How and if at all this problem statement addresses that or has any effect on it?
Kind of stretching here, but just based off the simple fact that you're now saving time, you can now prioritize, without the guilt. You can prioritize your sleep and your diet and your exercise, like just yourself, health, mental health, physical health. You can sort of prioritize that without feeling so guilty that it's cutting into your work or your productivity. But that is kind of a stretch.
We concluded with the problem ideation, chapter 1. We started off with sensing few problems related to the AI tools for decentralized groups. We went down root cause, analyzed few of the problems, got the list of them, had a voting round, and dived deeper into one of that, tried to get the good problem statement out of that. Then when we moved around to other problems, we actually noticed that there are some statements, for example, there are more virtual meetings than before, and we thought, okay, how do we prove that? And we're able to quickly find some results from Google to say just that how much it had increased, and it kind of increased the validity of actually that this trend we're having and this problem is very relevant to that. We then moved in, we had like a discussion how we were able to encompass the solution set what the Cortex actually has in the mind under one problem statement. It was quite a challenge, so we came back down and shared if there are other problem statements we could derive instead of humans are not good at retaining and tracking and capturing insights from meetings. And we ended up with one called disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming activities. And we did select this one as the main problem statements, but before that, we also discussed about splitting into smaller parts. And that's why we kind of had two areas, one where we are focusing on helping the facilitator, and another one was focusing on what to do with the content once it's already out, and how do we disseminate that kind of information and document in a way that it's useful for the future work, which is also helps the facilitator to plan. But the first part was So technically it does address that now when I describe it. But there was more thought into that before. And that's why we think there should be 2 proposals. How it will end up in the future will be seen. But for now, the problem statement which shows is disseminating and documenting meetings are time-consuming activities. And next up, we will go into the solution ideation. We'll plan that meeting later. And yeah, thanks for watching and see you out there.